Today we're going to be checking out a speaker I've been very interested in getting in for a review. I've got the P8 on the top, the P15 on the bottom. Together, like Voltron, they combine to make the P815 from Procella Audio. Included, we have the installation guide, and then on the bottom, we have the mounting bracket. If you did want to mount this on your wall, you would just take the included bracket, which is basically like a French cleat, screw it to your wall, and then the speaker would just slide right into it and lay flush against your wall. And since we're back here, this does have some very heavy-duty gold-plated binding posts. All right, so this is a fairly small-ish speaker. We're looking at about 16 1/8 inches in height. From front to back, we are looking at 7 7/8. And then we are looking at about 17 3/4 inches in width. And this does have a sloping profile, so it is wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And for width-wise, we're looking at about 5 7/8 at the bottom at its widest point. So this is a fairly narrow speaker if you want to just mount it on your wall, so it won't take up too much space. And behind the grill, you do have an 8-inch woofer with a phase plug in the center of it, and this will give you a frequency response down to 80 Hertz. And above that, this does have a waveguide with an 1.5 inch compression driver. This does have a dispersion pattern of 80 degrees horizontal and 35 degrees vertical. So the full frequency response of just the speaker itself, just the P8, is 80 Hertz up to 20 kilohertz, which makes this THX approved for integration into professional rooms, including THX certified screening rooms and THX PM3 studios, which is professional mixing, monitoring, and mastering. It's also a pretty hefty speaker weighing 31.3 pounds. And included with the subwoofer, we get the installation guide, and then we get 4 felt pads, so you don't scratch up your floor. This is a nice touch. They have included handles on the woofer. But this isn't crazy heavy, so it is very manageable. It weighs 52.9 pounds, so essentially 53 pounds. And technically this isn't a subwoofer per se. I guess they're calling it a balancing woofer. So it's just used to, I guess, even out response in your room and also make the P8 essentially a full range speaker. Now, I could be mistaken, but I feel like this paint is different than what was on the P6 Mark IIs that I reviewed a few years back. Like, this feels a lot smoother, whereas the other one had a texture to it. So I think this is different as far as like looks-wise or paint-wise. Size-wise, we are looking at around 18.8 inches in width by 22.5 inches in height by 11.25 inches in depth if we are counting the speaker grill, although it's 11 inches not counting the speaker grill. And behind the grill, we have a 15-inch driver with a frequency response of 22 Hertz at -3 dB. As far as connections, this is a passive speaker, so there are gold-plated binding posts on the right side of the speaker. And you will have to cross this over with the P8 at 150 Hertz, or at least that's recommended. So next, we are going to attach the P8 to the P15 SI. So this does come with a mounting bracket, which is essentially an L bracket. So there's a hole on the bottom and then 2 holes here on the main portion. On the P8, there are 2 screws that are already installed. You would unscrew those with your Allen wrench, and then this would attach here, and then we're going to attach the bottom half to the base, the 15-inch. First thing we're going to do is remove these 2 screws. Just a little tip, it is a lot easier to screw this in if you lay the speaker face down rather than trying to install it with it sitting upright. These are really long threads, so you don't have to be worried that this is going to rip out of the back of your speaker. Next, you are going to have to remove the screw on the top of the 15-inch woofer. So we're going to take the bottom of the bracket and just lay it on top of where that bolt was that we just removed. And I am a little surprised that there isn't any kind of padding or anything underneath this bracket, because once you bolt this down to the top of the 15-inch woofer, it's going to scratch. So I mean, that personally would kind of bother me, but I checked the box. There is no foam padding or anything like that. So I guess once this goes on, it's gonna go on, and if it spins around, it's gonna leave some marks, and that would personally really bother me. Now, if you did what I did and mounted it with the bracket facing forward, you can see that the speaker is tilting forward. So what we're gonna have to do is spin it around and mount the speaker on the opposite side of the bracket so it points forward. However, I guess if you are raising this off of the ground and you needed it to angle forward down at your main listening position, then I guess you would mount it that way. But for me, I'm gonna spin it around. And as you can see, if you flip everything around, then the speaker will face straight up and straight at the main listening seats, and you're good to go. And here it is. This is the fully completed P815. And once you get everything stacked up, this is obviously, it's gonna be a lot taller. So this is approximately about 41 5/8 inches in height. So it's not too tall. It's maybe like a mid-sized tower. Now, one thing that I did do is I did take some tape and I put it on the bottom of the bracket, so that way if this does spin around, it doesn't mark up the paint on the 15-inch woofer too bad. Because typically, you know, when I get these in for review, I don't like to bang up the product and then send it back to the manufacturer. So I like to keep things as nice as possible, as perfect condition as possible. So when these brands get their speakers back, they don't say, "Shane, you banged up our speakers." So I try to keep this in as pristine condition as possible. Well, I've got 3 of these in for review for left, center, and right. So these are going to go behind my screen. And the plan is to get more P6s, I believe, for the surround channels. And I believe that we're also going to get some P5s for the top channels, for the top ATMOS channels, or DTS:X channels, whatever. So that's the plan, is to run with a full Procella setup in the new theater. Whereas in the older theater, I think I had an 11 channel setup. So that was a much smaller room. This is gonna give the Prosella speakers a lot more space to breathe. So better separation, better sense of space. That's something I felt was obviously missing from my old apartment. And this is really gonna hopefully make these speakers shine a lot more, having the bigger speakers up front, and the newer Mark II P6s, which I was really a fan of. The Mark I's were a little soft on the top end, whereas the P6 Mark IIs definitely sounded more like a hi-fi speaker rather than kind of bland on the top end. I don't know what the P5s are gonna sound like or what these are gonna sound like, but I'm hoping these sound a bit like the P6 Mark IIs. So fingers crossed that it does have that same amount of detail and air and transparency as the Mark IIs did. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get these things set up in the theater, await the other speakers to arrive, and then hopefully I will be back in a few weeks, maybe a couple months, to give you a full review. And I am expecting some pretty good things because I am a fan of the Prosella speaker sound, and I think these are gonna rock, because these are, again, THX certified for rooms up to, I believe, 26 feet in depth. I think 26 to 30 feet in depth. They have another model above this one which goes beyond 30 feet, but this is gonna be perfect for my space because my space is 24.5 feet deep. So this is gonna fill it right up. And I think the max SPL on this is something like 122 dB with 130 dB peak. I'll put the exact specs on screen. Well, anyways, guys, thanks for checking out this video. Have you ever heard Prosella speakers? Do you have Prosella speakers? Do you have these speakers? Leave your comment down below and let me know. If there's a speaker that you want to see me cover again in the future for home theater, also leave me a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video.